Hi, everybody. Welcome
Hello.
back to Seek and Surrender on Awakening Airwaves. I'm Rosalind,
Hey, I'm Kay. Welcome back.
joined with Kay. We're here to talk about a interesting topic. I think it's something that we see maybe more often than we realize because people are so good at kind of like camouflaging into this. But we're going to be talking about toxic positivity. A little bit of a tongue twister. But yes, toxic positivity. So I'm sure you can kind of like think up in your head examples of people you may know that are kind of always, you're like, maybe are they okay? Like, they just seem so happy all the time. Do they really not deal with anything difficult? Or maybe you know people that kind of brush difficulties under the rug and try to just kind of keep that, you know, high vibe feeling going when really you can kind of tell that there's something underneath it all. But are there any examples that pop into your head, Kate, that you think of when you think of toxic positivity?
hmm Yeah, it's like it feels almost like you can't put your finger on it, but someone's not being genuine. You kind of
Mm,
intuitively know, that that's not the whole story.
yeah.
Um, so I'm always suspicious of someone who's like overly positive all the time and doesn't have show the other side really. Um, yeah, and I'm guilty too of like being positive in situations where it's not like necessarily usual.
Hmm.
But for me, that's different. I think, it's not ignoring the ugly parts. It's just kind of saying, okay, what does this look like in a higher perspective? And I think
Yeah.
that's a huge difference too.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's times where I'm guilty of it. And I think I'm like, my brain is very good at compartmentalizing. And so, in a way, it kind of is like I can sense something coming up. And I'm like, I can't think about this right now. So
Mm,
I'm going to put it in a box
yeah.
and then I'm going to just be positive. And then later, when I have some time to think about this, I'm going to like bring it, let it come back up to the surface.
Yeah.
So I definitely do the same thing.
Yeah. I think that too, what you said depends on kind of where you are too. Like sometimes
Hmm.
it's not always appropriate to be, you know, the way you really want to be like through those emotions. So like kind of keeping it together. Yeah, that's another side of it too.
Yeah,
hmm
for sure. It's like what's appropriate in this situation
hmm
and how do I handle it?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so the overarching kind of theme of what we're going to talk about is you can't heal what you don't feel. So kind of like what we've been saying, do you allow your feelings and emotions to come up in ways that you're processing in a healthy way? Or are you kind of the type of person that maybe stuffs things down and doesn't come back to them to address them later when you know that, you should? And this can be both things that you're dealing with internally and situations externally too. Um, But I wanted to kind of start with a definition that I found because I think it really kind of grasps this whole topic really well. But it just says toxic positivity is the overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state across all situations. The insistence that people should maintain a positive mindset regardless of how dire or painful a situation actually is, and this has a tendency to invalidate genuine human emotional experience. So I just thought that this was a really good kind of like snapshot of what it is because I think it's one of those situations where you feel like, and Kay, tell me if you've been told this too, but it's like, oh, that's not that bad. Like you'll be fine.
hmm
It's not, that's not that much pain. Like you'll get through it. Like don't worry about it. And it's just kind of this like brushing under the rug of scenarios.
hmm
Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, and in some cases that is kind of like appropriate. Like I grew up playing sports, so sometimes it does make you a little tough to kind of see past the small things.
Hmm.
But with like bigger things and making it a daily habit, like not kind of looking at these things, that's where it becomes a little toxic. But where do you think, I feel like this is like kind of mainstream, like a lot of people struggle with this. Like where do you think that pressure came from? Like um of being like overly positive or positive about every single thing? I think I kind of have an idea, maybe.
I think, well, the first thing that my head jumps to is wanting to be liked.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I think what we remember more easily, which is a terrible trait of the human brain, is the negative.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think and I know I did, you fear that if you are too vulnerable or if you are too open with, hey, you hurt my feelings, I'm really struggling and I need help, like not having it all together and not, um, yeah, just not feeling like you can be totally vulnerable, then that kind of relates to, okay, but if I show all of that, what if that's too much? What if that's makes me look like I'm not as good as these other people? Like, I don't know. I'm thinking of very childhood kind of times where I would have worried that I would lose friends over something like that or lose being accepted over allowing the negative to be out just because we hook onto negative so much easier than we remember good.
Yeah. And what's
So,
ironic about that is that people relate more to you when you're vulnerable and
mhm.
can be like a little more dynamic. Um,
Yeah.
I think too, like in the last 20 years, with all of the new age spirituality and like the rise of like social media and everything, it's like um, we were taught kind of like even in manifestation, it's like you have to think positively, you have to think positive
Hmm.
thoughts, to get what you want. You can't focus on the negative or focus on what you don't have. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that. It's not about being blind to it. It's just redirecting your mind, right? But not completely ignoring the shadow work and also like social media. It's like a highlight reel, right, of people's lives and also emotions. So just that pressure to be like all put together and
Hmm.
look like you've got it all kind of figured out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, I love that you bring up the manifesting part because that's probably where I've struggled with it a lot too, is you're trying to kind of focus on a goal or focus on something that you want to kind of create in existence. And you have heard all over the place of like, yeah, don't, you can't pay attention to how you don't have it. And you're like, wait, but I don't. And then it's like the mental game, the mental gymnastics of figuring out how to sit with the things that you are trying to kind of like bring about
Hmm.
while still recognizing that you don't have it yet, but that's okay. And that you're kind of like on the process of creating something. But yeah, social media for sure too. It's
Hmm.
just it's so much. So much.
Hmm.
Um so a few examples of what toxic positivity can look like or sound like, especially kind of in the spirituality kind of wellness realm of things that we are in. Things like we were saying, don't focus on the negative, just raise your vibrations. And then you're sitting there and you're like, but how? um, we can hear things like everything happens for a reason, but maybe hearing this at the wrong time. I think coming to that state of I guess positivity or acceptance is important. But if it's too soon and you really haven't processed whatever happened that caused you to kind of feel out of out of balance or out of your norm, saying everything happens for a reason too soon kind of might be bypassing in a way. Um, Things like treating grief, anger, fear, like spiritual failures. So yeah, just seeing anything negative in yourself as kind of a bad thing when really it's just part of the human experience and it's information and data that we kind of always need to be looking at because it's telling us something about our healing. Um, we can hear things in this realm of kind of bypassing emotions with affirmations or mantras or like overly spiritualized language, without really, same thing, addressing the deeper issues. And we kind of noted on social media, but seeing kind of these like good vibe only kind of posts and things like that. And then in like particular situations, we might be kind of to ourselves pretending that we're trusting divine timing when really we're kind of always caught in this cycle of overanalyzing or um, avoiding action sometimes too. And so you're kind of just using that like, oh, it'll all happen when it's supposed to happen. But really, it might just be an excuse that you're not ready to kind of look at what you need to look at to be able to take the next steps for whatever that is. Um, and also, kind of situations where you might suppress your anger when you are interacting with someone because you feel like you need to be kind, and maybe there's pressure to not kind of rock the boat in that relationship, whether it's with family or friends or partners. Um, when in reality, it's very valid and necessary sometimes to kind of voice your anger in productive ways, obviously not in hurtful ways or violent ways or anything like that, but taking the time to say like, no, this actually angered me, and I think I'm really valid for having that reaction, and I'd like to, talk about it and all of that. Are
Mm-hmm.
there any examples that come up for you and what it can look like?
Yeah, even like a job or a relationship that looks good on paper or to the outside world that you know isn't serving you,
Mm.
but you just want to maintain that positive image, like staying in those relationships. um that's another really good example, when you know you should just cut it off. But I think, what do you think is an appropriate response? Like, if you are feeling a certain way and you're not like completely positive about that, or you haven't looked at it, like, what's a response when someone says, "So, how are you feeling about X, Y, and Z?" Instead of being like maybe um, having that toxic positivity, like, what's a good thing to say?
Yeah. It's tricky, right? Because
Mhm.
it also is like it kind of depends on who you're with. And I
Yeah.
apologize if you can hear my dogs in the background. They're on high alert right now. Um, but I think it's tricky because I think I find when I'm, especially when it's like more of like an acquaintance level person, you're
Mhm.
like, I have a full answer here, but is it even worth going
Right.
into? Because this person doesn't know me. It's going to take all this background explanation, like
Mhm.
all of that. So in those situations, I kind of give it a pass. But I think there are ways to be honest, even with people that don't know you entirely well, but just making it like a human response of like, somebody asked you like how you felt about, I don't know, I guess a certain work situation.
Mhm.
Then in some ways you are kind of trying to make sure that your work image looks okay, but you still want to be honest. I think there's ways to say like, you know, I'm not sure it had the exact effect that we all hoped, or
Mhm.
like, or maybe, I personally might have done things a little bit differently, but I understand where they're coming from. Like
Mhm.
in a way that's positive, but you're still addressing that like something underneath is not ideal.
Yeah. I
But I
think
think it's
also,
it's a tricky line.
yeah, I think too, if you haven't like honestly sat with it yourself, like being honest and saying like, I haven't really processed that yet. I'm still
Mhm.
sitting with that, and I'll get back to you or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
also sometimes, not only are we dishonest or not genuine with how we respond to others, but like with ourselves. Like
Mhm.
sometimes you may actually believe that, or tell yourself that it's okay, or that it's not as bad, instead of actually going in and sitting with that.
And letting like the real feelings around a situation come up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's definitely the case because, of course, we don't want to be like sitting around miserable or like
Mm-hmm.
upset or, feeling hurt in a situation. But yeah, and I think too, like if processing is hard for you, seeking out counseling or
Mm-hmm.
therapy and things like that is always beneficial too, because I think like so much in spiritual work, but then in just life in general, we get so kind of in our bubble of looking at things a certain way that we sometimes can't kind of
Mm-hmm.
take it from a different perspective, or we can't see the full truth of kind of like what you're saying. Like we can't admit that things aren't what they should be or could be in the best of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would just randomly really suggest counseling and therapy. It's great
Yeah.
for a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I wanted to bring up something that I found in kind of researching for this. There's some work out of Stanford by a researcher named James Gross, and he looks at um, emotional regulation and kind of distinguishes between suppression and reappraisal. So, suppression being pushing feelings down, tucking things away, sticking it under the rug, not wanting to look at it, and reappraisal in terms of like actually sitting with things and looking at um like under genuine evaluation, kind of like we were saying, like taking the time to sit and like let things come up and try to look at things from kind of different perspectives to find your own truth. What was really interesting is the way that he put it is that toxic positivity is suppression dressed up as wisdom,
Mm.
which I thought was really interesting
Yeah.
because I think it shows that kind of like animalistic part of our brain that is just always trying to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of suppressing something because, in a way, it's your kind of fight or flight survival instinct to remain in the most balanced state. And so I thought that was really kind of like a shockingly interesting point.
Yeah.
What does that like bring up for you?
Um, it kind of reminds me when you say like self-preservation, like with your emotional well-being too. It's like sometimes you also do that, like if you're communicating with children, for example, like you're also wanting to protect them in that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in those cases, it's okay, like appropriate, like short term, but long term, it's
Yeah.
like important to have those honest conversations about what it really is. But yeah, um, that was said so well, like masked in wisdom, like the
Yeah.
suppression. What
Yeah.
are some ways that that you personally kind of go deep in looking at the shadow side of things?
Yeah. I mean, I think like we've kind of talked about, I get into a groove and I get to a point where I'm not fully realizing that something is being suppressed
Mm-hmm.
until I finally recognize, oh, I've been down this mental loop before. Oh, I've this little something that like this little twinge of something that's coming up. Oh, I felt that before. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the repetitiveness of it is when I catch it. And then I will kind of just be more open and aware and try to see maybe if it's because I'm interacting with someone else, what exactly is it that's kind of setting me off into this feeling? And is it them or is it actually like me? And then if it
Mm-hmm.
is, whatever the answer is and the dynamic, just really sitting with the intention of like, whatever comes up is okay. I'm willing to look at all perspectives here and just really letting the feelings come up because I think we're at least, I mean, I know I'm really good at pushing things away. Um, and yeah, just being really honest with myself and how I sit with discomfort
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that, like, no matter how uncomfortable it is, I'm going to be okay on the other side
Yeah.
with whatever comes up.
Yeah.
What
I
about
think
you?
for me, it's like kind of like reversing a web almost, and kind of like reversing
Mm.
everything and trying to get to the core of it. And I do that a lot, and reflect. Usually if I'm bothered by something or wanna or have the urge to push something down or away, it's usually like an ego response for me. So
Hmm.
um usually in those instances it's like something that I need to work on or something that's bothering me because um something that I need to change from my own perspective. So I usually sit with it for a while. I'll take a walk, meditate, and give myself time before responding. I think that's super important to like give yourself 24 hours before you respond in any way. That's what I usually do.
I like that you say that because I think because we have cell phones, we're so easily accessible all the time.
Right.
And people, you just have that pressure of like, they expect me to respond like immediately. And it's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, it
Yeah.
might be a good thing to kind of take a second. And even if you acknowledge and just say, hey, I need a bit of time, but I'll get back with you on this.
Yeah.
If it's a dynamic where you feel like you really can't wait that long before, or if they might freak out or something if they don't hear from you. But yeah, but you brought up something good about the ego, which takes me into like kind of some of the next notes that I had, but the shadow self in
Mm-hmm.
terms of Carl Jung. So he described the shadow self as like this unconscious part of the personality that the ego doesn't identify with. So it's like this foreign. It's not really who you are in a
Mm-hmm.
way. It's repressed emotions, fear, shame, rage. Um, and toxic positivity is essentially a refusal to integrate the shadow. So it's a refusal to not only just look at what your shadow self is, but actually fully embrace it and know that it's all parts of being human, having the light and the dark, and actually taking that in as part of your wholeness to understand yourself on a deeper level, which
Mm-hmm.
I thought was really, really interesting. Um, and then there's another note in here that just says, people who don't do their shadow work tend to kind of project that pain, that hurt, that part of their ego that they're not looking at onto others. And so I'm sure we've all had interactions with people that probably have a lot of shadow work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to kind of jump into what shadow work is, because I think it's a term that we kind of hear quite often in kind of the spiritual space and energy healing and wellness and all of that. But it's looking at parts of ourselves that we reject, hide, or judge. So anything that we don't want to admit to about us not being perfect. It's acknowledging unmet needs, wounds, triggers, resentment, shame, control, which I thought was important, envy, ego, and fear. And I wanted to note here too, like that whole list is full of both things we can control and things we can't control. So I'm kind of thinking to like upbringing, childhood, environment, situations that you're put into that you don't have choice over. Um, there are parts of that that become part of who you are, and it's not by your choice, and that's okay. And it's still things that need to be dealt with. And then on the flip side, all the things we can control, which is, wanting to be in control. And then the ego and all the emotions that kind of originate from within us. Um, Shadow work is also understanding that healing is not only about feeling better, but becoming more honest with ourselves and realizing that with positivity, um, it's an acknowledgement that actually two truths can be held at once.
Mm-hmm.
So something like, this is painful, but I can move through this. I can also have hope. I can also, have good things. This is wrong, but I can do better. Something like, I was scared, but it was for a reason, and I can grow and persevere and learn from this. So just taking the negative that you're experiencing and also knowing that it can still exist as you process it, as well as the kind of more hopeful, positive outcome attached to it,
Yeah.
that you're not going to like flip a switch.
I think too, it's important that shadow work, all of that, because when you could do that for yourself, you can hold space for people who maybe need to have a tough conversation with you. And you can kind of
Yeah.
have more grace for them of what they're going through and the shadow work they might be. trying to get through. If you've done it with yourself, you can be a better friend, better partner, just a better communicator too. So,
Totally.
yeah, it affects everyone around you too when you can do that for yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's, at least from my own personal experience, it's harder to give yourself that part of grace
Yeah.
than it is others.
Oh, yeah.
So knowing that you can reach that point with yourself is huge and
Hmm.
a big hurdle for sure. We also wanted to kind of chat through signs of yourself or someone you know that might be bypassing instead of healing. So, things to kind of be aware of is the tendency to always kind of reframe pain quickly. So, and I've seen this, happen in terms of like you're addressing somebody who's been through a tough time. You're like, oh my gosh, that must have been really difficult. And they're like, oh, I just learned from it. It's fine. I moved on. I'm good. And it's
Hmm.
just like that quick reframe. And you're like, hang on, this is serious. We don't want to just like brush things under the rug.
Hmm.
Difficulty admitting anger or hurt might be another sign. Inability to sit with discomfort or talk through what is uncomfortable is a really big one, especially when we see it in ourselves individually, but I think that comes up a lot when we're dealing with others. And then constantly analyzing and jumping to analytical meaning rather than actual feeling.
Guilty.
So, and that might even, yeah. And that might even come out when you're talking to someone in a sense of them always saying, like, I think blah, 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 instead
Yeah.
of like, well, I feel that made me feel.
Hmm.
It's more of like analytically phrased
Yeah.
statements. Um, and then I think we've kind of touched on this, but why it's so important to kind of do shadow work. What comes up for you on that of why we do need to sit with the discomfort and kind of let things be processed
I think
properly?
too, you can only deal with what you can handle, right? And
Mm.
you're not going to be able to handle more if you haven't dealt with what you've already been through. You can go through something realistically, but not really have gone through it emotionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So until you kind of sit down and kind of really go through all of the things, like from childhood till now, like um, only then will you be able to like kind of get through more difficult things. And it does make life a little easier when you have the tools to kind of be able to do that. So when things do arise, you could be more kind of a support role rather than kind of dealing with it so difficultly. So I think it's important in that way.
Yeah. And something you said kind of brought up a thought for me of how a lot of the shadow work, because it's things that we don't want to look at, our brain is very good at making those habits of not looking at them.
Hmm.
And so, yet it all still exists in the subconscious level of our brain and makeup. And it's still having its effect on our day to day life, even if we're not totally aware of it or conscious of it, because we are trying to push it down.
Yeah.
And kind of like what you said, the longer that we go without addressing it, the more our lives are being run by the parts of ourselves that we're just not willing to look at, and
Hmm.
probably causing, discomfort and difficulties when really it can be resolved.
Yeah.
So, yeah, shadow work is
And
so important.
I think sometimes too, like when you think that you've done your shadow work, um, you haven't really. Like there's always something else lying there that you're unaware of in your subconscious. So for me, an exercise that I did a while ago that was really eye-opening is each chakra I meditated on for like a week at a time.
Mm.
So starting from my root all the way to my crown, I meditated on it for a week and things just came up in each chakra that I was like, whoa, I didn't even think about this. I haven't thought about this for years. And then I kind of like looked at all of those things, healed them, kind of cleared them out. And that was like a cool reset to do. Like if you're somebody who thinks, you've done it, there's always something
Hmm.
that you can go back and heal.
Yeah. And just recognizing like the layers of healing. Like, I think if you've done kind of some shadow work for yourself before and you've kind of highlighted the main, trigger points that you have dealt with in your life, that's wonderful and great. But I think too, and I've personally done this with myself too, of like how hard I am when it comes back up.
Mm.
And it's like, but no, it's okay that it comes back up because there's so many complexities to all these scenarios that we work so hard to initially stifle that of course there's going to be layers of healing that need to be
Yeah.
done and life that needs to be lived kind of in between those chapters of healing too,
Hmm.
that kind of lead you down a path of understanding yourself on a deeper level as well. But I love that chakra run through because I could even see that too, coupled with like pulling cards for each chakra. And because I think too, it might be difficult sometimes when we um, hear like, oh, we all need to do shadow work. You're kind of like, well, how?
Hmm.
Like, what do I do? But that's a great
Yeah.
exercise. And then if you still kind of struggle at that starting point of what to meditate on, kind of like pulling a card of like, what do I need to be aware of in this chakra that needs healing and attention? And then you could pull a card and that can kind of lead you in some of your initial thinking. And then
Hmm.
I'm sure a lot of things will come up
Oh
in
yeah.
each one. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess before our last little thing of what we want to leave with people, we could jump into our cards for the
Yeah.
day.
Let's go for it.
All right. Our cards today, we have two cards, a little different this time. So card one and card two. Just take a breath and kind of see which card you feel more drawn to. And if you're listening, think of which number. First card is the method card. So we felt that this card really spoke to kind of the process of addressing kind of shadow and shadow work that needs to be done. In this card, she's kind of sitting at a laptop. She's got all the like divine cosmos behind her, kind of feeding into her mind. And we see a metronome on her table and like a little sand timer that's running. And I think what really stood out to me in terms of this topic from this card is just the acceptance that this type of healing takes time and it's not something to be rushed. And like the word itself, method, like there's a process to address this type of um, parts of ourselves. Uh, and so that was really what stuck out to me. And I think honestly, just like a personal message that I needed too was things take time. Healing takes time.
Hmm.
But what about you, Kay? What comes up with that card for you?
Yeah. For that one with the time, it brings me back to what you said about um, the layers. Like sometimes we evolve. Like I'm not who I was 5 years ago. And maybe I looked at some shadow work 5 years ago that if I looked at now, I'd be able to kind of heal in a completely different way. So
Totally.
not only like giving it time, but like timelines, like thinking of your life and seasons, and going back and revisiting even things that you thought were
Yeah.
healed or that you thought you were not bothered by anymore.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if you chose card number one, maybe kind of take that to heart where maybe you're trying to rush the process. Where is it that maybe time has played into how you might address the healing of something that you've already kind of looked at? Um, and yeah, is there maybe a different way that you can look at the process of addressing the discomfort within yourself in a new kind of method or procedure or process? So, card number two, if you chose card number two, we have the courage card. So on here, we have this sweet little boy. He's got this giant old red backpack that has like almost the size of him. Um, and in front of him, kind of on this street, we see who we can kind of presume to be maybe his parents, kind of expressing like a range of emotions. So one excited, happy, fist up in the air, cheering, and the other is kind of more worried, kind of resting on her face. She's kind of like, oh, I'm not sure about this.
Mhm.
Um, and so with this card, in terms of toxic positivity, it kind of, to me, just reminded me of all the ways that we can respond to whatever is being brought up. Um, and that kind of on this path, when we are dealing with these things that need to be healed, his little backpack just makes me think of like all the baggage that makes all of it more difficult to do. And just kind of acknowledging this fact that like it is not the easiest thing, but it is so important to like continue on to kind of work to lessen the weight of what you're carrying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just choose to kind of express through all the emotions that need to be brought up to do that.
Yeah.
That's what I think of with this card. What about you?
I think kind of similar. When you feel the urge to suppress a feeling or push it down or away, it usually comes from fear, right? So being afraid of the unknown or how bad that's going to feel, like it's not going to be worse than your future self not dealing with it. So I
Yeah,
think just having faith in that, um, you will get through it and be able to see the other side of it. Um, I think that's
definitely.
a good place to be in, to be able to see the
Mm-hmm.
other side, the other perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So if you pick card number two, maybe kind of just take that to heart, and how, and maybe even for yourself, you might need to acknowledge, yeah, this is difficult, but
Mm-hmm.
there is some positivity and kind of that. I'm sure Kay will put it up on the screen, but
Mm-hmm.
the sun in the background, like knowing that the clouds will part and that you will make it through whatever this that needs to be processed, has its time to be sat with. So yeah, so those are our two cards today. And hopefully that left you with some helpful direction. But let us know in the comments, which card did you pick? That would be lovely to know. How did it kind of like apply, do you think, to what you might have been needing to deal with? And lastly, we just wanted to kind of leave you guys with maybe some journal prompts in a way, some questions to ask yourself. Um, since this is kind of like an interesting and complex topic, we wanted to make sure we left you with something that you could really take as a way to process through it yourself. So here are just a few questions to kind of think about as you move through the next month or so. But what emotions do I judge in myself? A pretty big question.
Mm-hmm.
What part of me am I trying to outgrow without first understanding? Also huge.
Good questions. They're great.
Do I use spiritual language to avoid being honest?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I performing peace instead of embodying truth?
Mm,
I think is huge.
that's a good one.
Performing peace. What part of my healing have I been trying to skip? That might come back to like, I think we're deep down where we can always actually be honest with ourselves and know the parts that we're trying to scooch over without addressing. And then just lastly, kind of thinking through these questions and also thinking back to what we talked about in terms of like how you might see toxic positivity in others,
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of leave you with the encouragement of trying to be more aware both with yourself and with everyone around you. And Kay, you kind of said this earlier too, of like everybody's going through a difficult journey of trying to process difficult things,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're really trying hard to sweep them under the rug or they're actually kind of working through taking the time addressing them. Just having grace with yourself and with the people you interact with, knowing that we're all kind of on this journey of trying to heal and be in the best, most balanced state that we can. So I just wanted to leave that as the last thing of, just being open and aware. And if you see someone that you feel like might be in a way suffering or maybe dealing with difficulties related to things that they're trying to suppress, being kind of that listening ear and kind smile, or, whatever you can be to help someone else know that it's okay to work through it and talk about it and um, do the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and you can be even more of that person when you do it for yourself, right?
definitely.
And also just to leave everyone with this takeaway, our message today, it's not like to not be positive, right? It's
True.
be be positive, but make sure it's positivity that has depth and is grounded in honesty, right?
Hmm.
So make sure you do the work first.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We definitely want you to be happy. We don't want you to be sad, but there
Right.
is a genuine way to do it for sure.
Mhm.
All right, y'all. That's all we have for this episode. We hope you are doing absolutely wonderful. Just be sure to be involved with the channel and leave us some comments of what you thought on the topic. Um, Watch all of our lovely other women on the channel as well. I'm just like floored by how many episodes of incredible topics and content that is like churned out through all of
Yeah,
us. And I'm just like, oh my
crazy.
gosh, it's amazing. So, yeah, take a listen to everyone else's shows. And yeah, that's all I got. What you got, Kay? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.